very glad to be here. Thank you very much for your interest to learn more about the energy transition. That's the key topic of our webinar today. And we're going to address three main questions. Why we need an energy revolution? How can we actually all benefit from it? And how can we make the energy transition really happen? I would like to start actually with a small story and introduction by myself and about my research. When I was at school, that was actually the time where I became really interested about the environment and about environmental protection. By the time I joined an international environmental organization, and I learned a lot about different environmental topics. And this made me also to decide to study environmental science in the first place, and also climate science later on in my master's. But believe it or not, I couldn't get enough from studying, so I even decided to do my PhD. And I got the chance to join a nice project which was dedicated to the topic of regional climate change. So what does this mean? This basically means that within the project, we looked about how people in local regions actually perceive climate change. So in the places where the people live. And this made me come to North Frisia. It's really an area in northern Germany. You see me here, like when I went to this region, really located in the north, actually quite close to the border of Denmark. And this land is quite characteristic that it has like a dike, like as you can see here in the picture on the top of the left, which actually protects the land where the people live behind from becoming actually flooded in daily day-to-day basis, but also when there are, for example, like big storms approaching the coast. And this region really fascinated me, and I want to share maybe some of this fascination for the region by showing you a small video from the region itself. So let me show you a little bit more of this beautiful landscape. So what you can see here is one community where I spend a lot of time in my studies. You can see it's a really, really flat landscape. What also quite dominates the landscapes are all these windmills. You can now see it slowly disappearing on the left. And then you can see we have really this nice landscape here, the nice sea, the nice North Sea approaching. So what is really fascinating about the landscape is, of course, the natural beauty, but what also really got me is the fact that the energy transition really started early in this local region. This means that individuals living in the community and also local farmers actually started slowly building up wind farms, as you can see here in the picture. So this kind of windmills, they are all owned by the local population. One of the first wind turbines was actually here built in 1983. Yes, 83, that was even before I was born, so really, really early, it feels at least for me. And over the years, from individuals who kind of started to build like this first wind turbines that ever existed on our Earth, we kind of built more and more infrastructure, like more windmills together in this local regions, as you can see here. And then now we have the so-called community projects, so really owned by more people together, like this beautiful wind farms you can see in the background. And this enables like local communities, in this case here the local community of Reuss and Köge, to produce today 4 times more electricity than they actually need. So I think that's what I found really impressive, and I really enjoyed like talking to the people there and to learn more about this energy transition, which is actually really one of the places we can say where the energy revolution has started. And in Germany, really it has started a lot in the local places and was a lot driven by local farmers and individuals who actually decided to invest in this infrastructure. So this was for me totally fascinating, and I really enjoyed my studies in this area. But let's move a little bit on and let's see, okay, coming from this small community, let's zoom a little bit out and let's see what is actually the energy transition? What is kind of the major topic of today? So generally, we can say the energy transition is a structural change in our energy system, meaning we are moving from the so-called old members of the energy family, the ones you can see in the back, hot coal, brown coal, gas, and nuclear, towards renewable energy sources. And there we have wind energy, as we just have seen, like wind energy on land, but they can be also offshore, so in our waters. We have maritime energy, for example, energy produced by waves we see in the seas. We can have hydropower, so energy produced in our rivers. We can have biomass by, for example, burning waste. We can also use the inner core of our Earth, like the heat from our Earth, like via geothermal energy, and produce energy. And we have solar energy, meaning that we take the sun to generate electricity or heat for our homes. And what is so great about renewable energy? I mean, renewable energy, they are really powered by our Earth's natural resources. So by sun and wind, meaning we don't run out of them, right? They are available all along. And the good thing is they have no net greenhouse gas emissions. So, and this brings us also to the question why we need a renewable energy revolution at all. And this point is highly related to the point of being emission-free. If you look on our Earth, then the energy transition is really like their solution to fight actually climate change. Here we got our poor Earth saying, maybe people will notice if I tweet a selfie. So our Earth really becomes the so-called hot Earth, meaning like our Earth, as you can see here, is really, really sweating. If you look before our pre-industrial levels and where we are now today, then we experience already a warming of 1.1 degrees. So we are already a bit more than 1 degree hotter than we were before. And climate scientists predict us, if we not act now, then we maybe end up at 3 or 4 degrees warmer Earth than we used to. And this is really, really alarming. So climate change is happening. And already today, we see that there are dramatic impacts on our natural and also our human systems. You might be familiar already with this nice warming stripes, which actually simulate the change in global temperatures from 1850 to 2019. And you can really see that the temperatures around the globe are really increasing. And there you can take also different places around the globe. Maybe you also recognize that every year actually almost now comes, oh, it has been the hottest year we have ever seen. So these are all symbols of this climate change we are experiencing. And sadly, we find also out that the warming is actually much faster than we originally expected. Many of you have maybe faced already certain impacts of climate change. Here we can think, for example, about heat waves, about droughts, about floods, but also about loss of biodiversity. Maybe you have seen the nice pictures of the coral reefs in Australia that are bleaching out and getting white, or also the decline of ice sheets. Here in the background, you see that a glacier still in 1995 actually reached till to the front of our picture here. So here there was still a glacier. And now it's like far here in the back, what is kind of left. So that's a global phenomenon, what we can see, that there are different impacts of global warming. So climate change challenge is to a large extent actually an energy challenge. Why is this? If you look, 2/3 of our global anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions actually come from energy. Energy used in our buildings, so for our everyday needs, right? Also, we need now energy to actually connect with each other, right? To have run our computers. So that's one key source, to heat our houses, that we are now here nice and sit warm and cozy all together. It's also used for transport, so for all moving around, driving a car, flying around, but also energy that is used to produce all the daily products we are using, like food, but also like other products of our daily care. So we really need to cut out our emissions in the energy sector in order to solve the climate challenge. So where are we at the moment? Like, what is really the status quo in our energy transition? Well, the bad news is we can really summarize that we are currently not on track. So here you see kind of the story of global emissions, and we can see still across the world, global greenhouse gas emissions are still rising. I mean, we have seen last year that around 7% decline in greenhouse gas emissions due to the COVID-19 crisis. And we all know we stayed more at home, we didn't move around, we didn't fly. So this had kind of a short-term good effect, maybe, on our emissions. But the long-term trend is still not holding. So we are still moving rather towards a climate crisis. And actually, science tells us that we have lost a lot of time not acting on climate change, and we need to move much faster. This is also a bit like reflected in this figure here of our energy supply, for example, in 2080. You can still see like the dominant fields are still the so-called old members of the family, right? Still oil, coal, natural gas, they still produce all our energy globally. And we have like large, smaller shares here down to the left, like biofuels with 9%, solar and wind covering only 2%, and hydrogen covering 3%. So currently, nearly 10% of the global energy capacity comes from renewable energy. So from these newer sources of energy production. And the good news is that actually those renewable energy sources are the fastest growing in the world. So while the others are declining, more and more this kind of newer forms of energy generation pushing forward. An example here from Germany. In Germany, 42% of the electricity demand actually come now from renewable energy. So this is only electricity. We do not talk about heat or mobility here. There it doesn't look so rosy as in the electricity sector, but electricity is really something where we got already the furthest. And we have now also to move the transformations also in the other sectors. In 2020, so last year was actually the first time that we had renewable energy sources like sun and wind produce more electricity than fossil fuels. And I think that's a really, really nice sign that there is really a transition happening at the moment. So, but where do we have to get to, right? What is actually the target? Like where we have to go? Well, in the long run, we have to have a climate neutral world. What does that mean? Different scientists actually tell us if we really want to avoid the worst effects of climate change, we must limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees or a maximum of 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This actually means if we are on the figure now here, we have to decide where we want to go, right? And the best case, the safest way to go is really to go down here, to really move towards 1.5 degree warming, which really means we need to cut our greenhouse gas emissions dramatically. The middle line is what we have committed to already under the Paris Agreement. Not sure if you are familiar with this, but it's a really legally binding international treaty on climate change, the so-called Paris Agreement, which has been ratified by almost 200 states in 2015. So it's really important treaty here. So I recommend to look it up if you're not familiar with it yet. If we take no action, we might end up in an even warmer world. But it also shows us like there is a gap between what we have committed to, what we want to do, and where we actually want to go to. So that's the important challenge here ahead. The EU also wants to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050 already. So this sounds really nice. So this means the EU economy will have net zero greenhouse gas emissions. A big milestone is to reduce the emissions by 55% by 2030. And in order to achieve this, we really need to decarbonize the energy sector. Decarbonizing means really here cutting out emissions. And this will largely be only able if we really move towards renewable energy sources. As you can see here, like Angela Merkel, German Chancellor, is looking on an offshore wind field in the North Sea. To get there and to reach this ambitious goal, there is a so-called strategy, the European Green Deal. Not sure if you're familiar with this, but just to notice, there is like a big EU strategy you should definitely look up, because it will determine a lot like the way we will go as European countries over the next years. So let's have a closer look to the benefits of renewable energy. And there are, I would say, like 5 big transformation wins. So meaning if we do the transformation, how we can actually really all benefit from it. First, the energy transition really can enhance our health and well-being, like of all of us. Sadly, 92% of our world is actually affected by polluted air, causing 7 million deaths every year. So meaning, like, if you really move to cleaner energy production, to renewable energy, we will actually have a much better and healthier environment for all of us. Well, that's not really true anymore, because we have seen that the costs were falling really rapidly. Can you still hear me? Yes, right? If not, so let me know. It just showed me my internet is a little bit unstable. So 82%, for example, if you look on solar photovoltaics, actually now to install a solar panel on your own house would be 82% cheaper than it was like kind of 10 years ago. So that's really, really dramatic decline in costs we have really seen for different renewable energy technologies. So that's really great news. And actually many renewable energy projects are now even cheaper than the cheapest coal-fired power plants. So that's, I think, an important milestone, that renewables get really competitive with our older members of the energy family. Third, renewables can really create more energy independence and avoid also conflicts over really scarce resources. So if we have, for example, like renewable energy sources, then we can produce them and power our regions and cities really across Europe with it, and produce the energy much closer to the regions and cities where we are actually living. A colleague of mine has developed a nice map I want to show, and you can check it out kind of later at home. So what we can see here, let me see how I can go actually away. I will close this one, and now it can be here. So what you can see here is a map to what extent like Europe and different European cities can become energy autark, meaning energy independent, producing as much electricity in the regions as they might need. As Europe itself, we could do this. So you can see whole Europe is green. So it will likely be possible that all the renewable electricity that we need will be produced in Europe itself. If you look, for example, to France, to Paris, we can see, oh, how does it look like with Paris in the greater area? You can also see that it will be maybe possible that whole Paris will be able to produce all the renewable electricity it will need for itself. But the good news is we have a lot of green spaces around, right, where usually less people live. So those regions can also support in the production of electricity. So there are different regions you can check. I think actually we don't have data for Russia, I'm afraid. But all the others you can play a little bit around and have a look still what this means for different regions within Europe. Renewables can also create a lot of jobs. So the employment, like across different renewable energy sectors, is really, steadily increasing. So we have more and more people working in the solar energy field. 11.5 million renewable jobs is what we had in 2019. The majority are actually in China. So China is really booming in terms of renewables. And most of the people work really in the solar photovoltaic industry. So as you see, look, those guys here in the background, like they are installing like a solar photovoltaic panel on a house. The good news is that there is really a trend that renewables will be able to employ even more people that are employed now in coal and oil sectors. Renewables can really also empower communities and cities. It's a bit of story I told you before from my farmers in North Frisia, in northern Germany. Across Europe, we see that more and more people come together, like different people, like different ages from different regions, and they actually decide to become owners of local community energy projects. And this became really a common practice across Europe and also beyond. The basic idea behind this is energy by the people for the people. So you all yourself, and likely we all will be in the future, be able to produce our own electricity and to have infrastructure close to where we actually live. In Germany, actually 40% of the people are the owners of solar panels and wind turbines. So if you always think about whatever, the big energy companies and other companies being the owners and building the infrastructure, no, that's actually not the case. So it's largely really the people, like local people, that are really driving the energy transition. So how can we make this now possible? So how can we ensure that all the benefits I just mentioned, that they are actually really take place, that we can really benefit from the energy transformation? Well, for sure, it will be not easy. Like doing this, I think it's like really a mammoth project. Like it's really a big effort, and it will need all the people really to work together here. And it will also mean really a big change, how we all live together. So if you think like, oh, how is my life today? How do I produce and consume my energy? Like how I move around? It actually all has to change. So that's kind of the way to go. How will it look like? I mean, first, it's of course a technological challenge. We need to fundamentally change how we produce our energy today. It means we need to put a lot of money and we need to build a lot of new infrastructure. And likely this new infrastructure will be much more localized. I mean, I told you already. So now we have often like the big power plants that are situated at one specific place in your city. In the future, it will be much more localized, meaning where you live, you will have a solar panel, or maybe not far from your home, you can even see maybe a windmill producing the energy of your daily demand. That's what you kind of see here from the left picture, moving towards the right vision here. Everything will be also much more digitalized. I mean, you're quite used to it, right? Like having phone, being online, being connected, and everything also around energy will be much more smarter, that you have maybe your smartphone and you will see how much energy you lose around the day. You can navigate your heating just all via your phone. So it's kind of what we call kind of also, this kind of smart metering, smart managing of our energy demands. And everything will be much more connected. So if you think about electricity, heating, and transportation, so these different sectors will be much more integrated. For example, if you produce more energy as you need, maybe you will have a car that will be able to store the electricity in the meantime, and then when you need it, it will be released out of your local storage system. Important is also that it's a just transition. The EU uses also this framing of ensuring that no one will be left behind. Well, it sounds like quite gloomy. What this actually really means is like those guys here hold a sign saying we are the energy transition. So it's really a lot about making everyone part of this whole transition and ensuring that everybody benefits and understands why this transition is really so important. It can mean by creating social well-being, so having also like secure energy for everyone, make the transition really affordable, meaning that we are all able to pay our bills, right? I mean, we don't want that we can't afford the energy or to heat our homes. So it must be really a transition that also encounters so-called energy poverty. We should really listen to the people. So really ensure that we understand what the people want, like what specific sources of energy may be preferred in specific regions. And we should provide opportunities really to be part of the transition. So really understand what the people can do, like how we can involve the people to be part of the energy transition. And this is often called also energy democracy, so that you have more democratic structures around the energy production. And of course, we need to support it. We ensure we really support local regions in transitions, for example, like coal regions that will be highly affected by the energy transition, including also workers, like people that are actually working now in the fossil fuel sector, that we ensure that they find new opportunities here. These are just a few examples of how a fair transition should be enabled. We talked already about climate and energy policy, and of course, this will be really important. The EU might be actually able to really lead the way, but in order to do so, we really need to get rid of everything that actually holds us back. So you see this poor guy here sweating because we still have fossil fuel subsidies, we still have maybe targets that are not ambitious enough, we have people that don't want to let go coal production and still hold on it, and that's all what's actually not really helpful for really making a transition happening. What we need instead is making actually pollution expensive, so that emissions, you have to pay high prices for it. I mean, you maybe have heard of like for the EU emission trading scheme, where we can trade emission certificates or carbon prices that are under discussion, that you pay a specific price for every ton that is actually emitted. And we need to really promote renewable energy, for example, by paying subsidies to providing subsidies for renewable energy technologies, so that if you buy a solar panel for your house, that you can actually get some financial benefits out of it. We talked a little bit already about the Green Deal, and I think we all know the COVID crisis now is really difficult, right? I mean, it has affected all our lives, our societies, and our economies. And the essential thing is really here that we understand the current crisis as an opportunity to really flip the green switch, meaning we should really try to recover for a better world. So really support zero emission infrastructures and technologies, really support also innovation in nice technologies, getting rid of all fossil fuel subsidies, and really embrace more nature-based solutions here. And believe it or not, but many people always talk about, at least in Germany, talk often about subsidies for renewable energy, but the ones for fossil fuels are generally still much, much higher. So we support them financially much more. But what is also essential is that the energy revolution really starts with you, starts with all of us. As I said already, we are all part of it, and it will be only possible if we kind of all work together for it. We can all contribute, like in our daily lives, to protect the environment and actually our climate. I just listed here some examples, and there are many, many more what you can think of doing actually to bring the energy transition forward. For example, by living a car-free life, by flying less, by maybe buying green electricity at your home, by installing a solar panel, by heating only as much as you need, switching off standby or turning off the lights when you kind of leave a room, right? Put energy efficient lighting in your houses, really exchange maybe the light bulbs, for example, you're having. And maybe even you can think about starting like a project in your school, for example, about installing a solar panel, at the roof of your school. I think that would be also like a really cool project. So something we can maybe discuss also after the talk a little bit together. So there are many opportunities here as well. And what is also essential, your voice really counts. So, I mean, I'm so impressed, like what the school strikes and the climate movement that really emerged based on this really has reached. I mean, it has globally really brought up like this whole topic of climate change even more. And now it's much more awareness about this topic again. So really the strong voices by the society have really an impact on politics. And I think that's really also an essential message here. Because as we know, there is no planet B. So as this young girl here to the right has this nice sign holding in front of us. And if we are able to do this, then actually the energy system and the energy transition is actually much more than only a transition of the energy system. For me, it's like really a vision for greener and more livable cities and communities. So it's really like, you exchange really the world, how it is today, towards a world where you have more space to live and to embrace and to enjoy, actually also in our cities. So it will be all carbon neutral, mainly powered by wind and sun. It will be much more human-centered mobility, so that we transform maybe our streets, having much more nature there, maybe even growing small gardens in our cities. Everyone is much more connected, like not only technological wise, but also socially wise. And all the energy is really produced much more decentralized in the local places there they live. There are some visions, but there are many more, and we can make this transition towards this better futures really happen. So let's drive the energy transition together, because only together it is actually possible. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. I hope I could give you some nice insights about the energy transition here.